My name's Simon Bowler and this is episode 1 of our Oak Frame Gazebo Build. Before we talk about what's just happened to this great big piece of oak, let's cut to the workshop and I'll talk about exactly what we're going to be doing. So our next project is an oak frame gazebo. It's been designed by a garden designer as a small part of a much bigger scheme. We've been invited to implement the gazebo. In short, it is 6 metres long and 3.8 metres deep. It will have 6 posts, a wall plate that goes all the way around, a collar tie joining the sides together, and 12 knee braces. The knee braces are the curved bits that form the triangulation for the wind bracing. They're also, in my opinion, the most decorative part of any oak frame. We're going to head out shortly and choose the beams from the oak beam supplier. They will get delivered to site, and then we're going to focus our attention on the knee braces. The knee braces, they get made in the workshop, everything else happens on site. I do very much enjoy making these knee braces because we get to use some pretty interesting pieces of equipment in the workshop. So that's what we're going to focus our attention on first. We've just spent 20 minutes or so choosing these beams. We've got 6 legs, 4 wall plates and 1 collar tie. What we're looking for when we're choosing these beams is overall dimension. Are they long enough? Are they straight? And are they square? Now we accept that with the very long beams, they're not going to be perfectly straight. This is solid oak, it's a natural product, but they have to be straight enough. Another interesting fact about these beams is they are box heart beams. That means that the heart of the tree, you can see the rings there, is boxed in. Just helps for stability. But these are the beams that we're going to be turning into our gazebo. They're not planed at the moment, they're rough sawn, that's why there's different colours, steel stains, some sides have been in the sun and they've gone silver. That doesn't matter because the first process is to plane them up and make them smooth. So the knee braces are done. Now there's quite a lot of processes that these have to go through to get from the rough sawn 8x4 blanks all the way to the finished article. They have to be cut, loosely speaking, to length. They have to be flattened, squared, thicknessed in 2 dimensions. They have to have the tenons put on, and then they have to go on the bandsaw to put the curve in. We'll probably save all those processes for a future video and look at those in more detail. But these are now going to go to site where we are waiting to take delivery of our beams. So we're out on site. I just want to talk to you about the first thing that we do on every single gazebo build, and that is make a wooden frame that represents the perimeter, the footprint of our gazebo. We've done that, squared it up and positioned it centrally on the pad. That tells us where our staddle stones are going to be placed. More on the staddle stones later. In terms of groundworks, this gazebo is going to be very, very heavy. The team of landscapers that built this garden have put some concrete footings underneath the patio, about 600mm by 600mm by 600mm deep, so quite big footing pads. They've then flagged straight over the top, so there's Yorkshire stone straight on top of the concrete. The purpose of that is to take the compressive force, the weight of the gazebo, to stop it sinking and damaging the patio. That's already happened. We're just waiting on our beams to be delivered now. When they arrive, we'll take a good close look at them. Beams have landed, and after a bit of a wrestle and a bit of manhandling, we've got them to where we're going to be installing them. A couple of notable points. You can see some of them are very fresh in colour and some of them are very silver in colour. That's just because they've been kept in the sun at the supplier. Some longer than others, some have been on the middle of a pack and never seen the sun. It looks alarming, but it isn't, because we've got a machine, quite an interesting machine, that will plane these across the full width and full length and bring them back to fresh and breathe a new lease of life into them. So that's the next phase, plane all these beams and get them as close to final dimension or as close to the same dimension as each other as we can. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to use a big handheld plane. Beam is on the trestles and we're going to turn this sun silvered beam into a fresh one, like I said earlier. And to do that, we're going to use this. Now, if you've come over from Instagram, you're probably already familiar with this. I call this the comedy size plane. Essentially, it is just a handheld plane. But it's quite a big one. The knives are 312mm long. In fact, it's as big as they come from this brand, from Makita. This is the biggest handheld plane that they do, and it's well on top of the job of planing these beams. The difference it makes is profound. You'll see in a minute. So the idea of that is not to straighten them, it's just to bring them back to a fresh looking product. You can see just down the way there is a little bit that the plane's missed. Rather than putting multiple passes on and reducing the dimension of the timber too much, we'll touch that up with a belt sander before installation. We are keeping tabs on the overall dimension to make sure that to within a couple of millimetres they're all the same width and thickness. But the primary reason is to turn them from what did look like an old beam, even though they weren't, into something that looks absolutely brand new. Incredibly, in March it's snowing, so we've got the gazebo set up, keeping us and our tools dry. This is the first support post that we're going to be working on. This is going to be a corner post, so we have to form a tenon at one end. We call it a four-way tenon because it has shoulders on four sides. You may call it something different, that's absolutely fine. I've squared a line round at 210mm down, and that is going to leave us with a 210mm long tenon that is going to project all the way through the wall plate. That will come clear later on. So we're going to relief cut this now and then break it out with a mallet. The machine we're going to use to do it is this handheld circular. It's got a 9-inch blade. It's not the biggest one that we've got. We have got a much bigger one that you'll see, but that's the process for this. Square line, relief cut, break it out, and that will expose the tenon. We're aiming to leave in the region of a third of the material, so we take a third of the material out all the way around, which will leave us with a square tenon in the middle of the post. You'll see. So now we've finished the tenon on the end of the post, we can turn our attention to the mortises in the side of the post, which are going to accept our knee braces, those curved bits that we made in the workshop. So we've used the tenon to set out the position in the side of the post in order that that tenon fits in this mortise when it's been dug, and the other tenon will fit in the wall plate, which in the fullness of time will be coming up here. We've got quite a specific machine to do that. It's this is a chain mortiser. These aren't overly common. It's kind of a cross between a router and a chainsaw, and it does one job, and that's dig mortises very quickly, very efficiently, and very accurately. So we'll have a go with that. So the tenon on the knee brace is now in the mortise in the side of the post, and you can see that when the wall plate goes on, represented by this level, everything lines up nice and true. So we've got 4 corner posts. This is one of them. It's a case of repeat the process now until the 4 corners are done, and then we can look at the intermediate posts down the side. They're slightly different. That's all 4 corner posts prepped so we can turn our attention to the intermediate posts. So this gazebo is 6 metres long, therefore it has to have a support post in the middle of that long side, and that's what this is going to be. The processes are exactly the same. It has to have a tenon on one end and 2 mortises to accept 2 knee braces, but there's a couple of differences. The tenon doesn't need to go all the way through the wall plate, so it can be much shorter. As I've set it out here, it's about 90 or 100 millimetres long. And it's only going to be a 2-way. It's only got 2 shoulders on it on opposing sides. Now, I've set this out away from the end of the post because there's a couple of big cracks here that we don't want to include in the final product, and this post is long enough to afford us the opportunity to cut those off. And it provides me with a bit of firewood for a few years' time. That said, best we set to with some power tools. Today's a new day, we're back on site and we've got the next beam on the trestles. This is a 20-foot long 6 metre 8x8 beam, and it spans the entire length of this gazebo with a support post in the middle and 1 at each end. So the works that have to happen to this are 2 half flaps need cutting at each end in order that the other wall plates can fit on top. And then on the underside there's a series of mortises. Now, the handheld circular saw that we use to cut the tenons on the post isn't quite big enough. It's only got a 9-inch blade in it, so it's still pretty big, but it's not big enough to cut these half flaps. Which is why we've got this. I refer to that as the comedy size handheld circular. It's got a 14-inch or 350mm blade, and it'll cut deep enough to cut these big oak beams to length with 2 passes, but also deep enough to cut the half flaps out of them. So that's the machine we're going to be working today, in addition to the chain mortiser again. 2 half flaps and a series of mortises underneath to accept posts and knee braces. I appreciate the light isn't great for filming at the moment, that's courtesy of the snow, but please bear with us. Anyway, the 2 half flaps are done now, they're ready to accept the opposing wall plates. We've rolled this beam over because all the rest of the work happens from the underside, which we're now looking at. There's 7 mortises to dig, 3 for the posts, 1 at each end and 1 in the middle, and 4 knee braces to suit those posts. So it's just a case now of having a good old session on the chain mortiser, and then that is this beam done. So that is this first wall plate finished, half flaps in, mortises in and ready to go. The way that we've done this suits us, suits our project and suits how we work. You may well do it differently and that's absolutely fine. In the next episode, we're going to be looking at putting this frame together and probably putting a roof on it as well. Thank you very much for watching. If you wouldn't mind clicking the subscribe button, that would help me out tremendously, and I'll catch up with you on the next one. Bye for now.